Hello everyone, it's Channin here for Honeybee Stamps. In today's video, we are going to create this pretty wedding card featuring the Lovely Layers Dogwood set. I'm going to share with you some ideas and some ways to add even more detail to these beautiful dies. We're going to start with the Lovely Layers Dogwood set here. I'm going to grab the largest die from the set. This is the die for the branches, and I'm going to die cut it out of some really dark green cardstock. Then we'll move on to the leaves. There are several of them. I'm going to pull them all off here, and then I'm going to die cut them out of this medium kind of green color, and you end up with 6 leaves in total. Then we're going to move on to the flowers. There are again a bunch of dies here. I'm just going to pull off all the flowers including the buds, and we're going to die cut them out of some white cardstock, and in the end you'll end up with 9 flowers in total, 6 flowers and 3 buds. Now we're going to move on to the flower centers. There's 2 dies for that. That'll actually die cut 5 flower centers, and I die cut them out of some lime green cardstock. Now we're going to move on to adding some depth to these die cuts, starting with the branch. I'm just going to ink blend with a really dark brown. This is ground espresso. Different areas on the branch. It doesn't really matter. You just don't want to ink blend the whole branch brown, but just a couple areas just to add some depth to that branch. Now we're going to move on to the leaves. I've grabbed peeled paint, and I'm just going to ink blend the base of the leaf where the leaf would meet the stem, and just create a little gradation over each one of these leaves. Once I finish with that peeled paint, we are actually going to move away from the ink and add some details with a colored pencil. I have this olive green Prismacolor color pencil. Really any color pencil will do. You definitely want to make sure it's nice and sharp, because you're going to kind of trace over the leaf veins that the die actually creates in the leaf itself. It's very easy to do, and this will just make those veins pop a little bit more and stand out. Now we're going to move on to the flowers. Now the flowers are a little complex. I did a lot of different colors. I started with the centers, just quickly ink blended with Kitsch Flamingo. I do want to point out that I've been using a shader brush. This is shader brush 1. It's a round shader brush. I've used it for the leaves and the branches as well, but any small blending brush would really work, but the round ones are really a great size. Now I'm going to move on to the shader 2 brush. It's a kind of a linear brush with a slight angle to the actual brush head. I'm going to ink blend with Candied Apple along the edge of all the petals, and then I will use another shader 2 brush and ink blend with Picked Raspberry along those edges again. A little bit more with the Picked Raspberry, going a little bit further down the petal, I should say, with the Picked Raspberry, just to make it a little bit more pinkier. But the pink and the red layered at the edge of the petals really makes this pretty color and adds a lot of depth, a lot more interesting than just using the Picked Raspberry. So it is worth that little bit of extra effort of doing 2 colors. Then I'll finish with the buds and do a little bit on the top of the buds as well. And now we're ready for our colored pencil again. So I've grabbed a hot pink colored pencil. Again, I'm using Prismacolor pencils, but any colored pencils will work. And I'm following along the lines that the die creates in the petals, but also kind of stretching, connecting some of the lines or the details, and even adding some of my own, because I want to make these petals look a little stripy. That's kind of my goal here, and you'll end up with something like this. Now we are going to actually do the flower centers. They're very, very simple. I'm going to grab a Copic marker here and just color like halfway around the flower center with a little bit of that yellow to make it look a little bit more bulbousy, a little bit more rounded. Now we're ready to put this together. You want to start with the leaves because the flowers layer on top of them, so and it will overlap, so you definitely want to start with those leaves. So I just added a little bit of precision glue to the branch where the leaves are, and now I'm just popping on each one of those leaves. Now I'm going to move on to the flowers, add a little bit of liquid glue to those flower areas on that branch, and then I will just line up my flowers with their coordinating spot. I find if you look for something distinguishing about that one particular flower, one of the petals on that flower, that kind of helps to get them to figure out which flower goes where. And then the buds are really easy. They're interchangeable. You can put any bud on any one of those bud areas and they'll fit. Now for the flower centers, I've picked 5 of the biggest flowers, added a little dab of glue to the center, and then I will just place any one of those flower centers. Doesn't matter which one you put where, there at the center of those flowers. And that will actually complete my dogwood branch. Isn't it so pretty? So much depth there. Love the extra details that we added with the colored pencils. I went ahead and created a second one as well as 2 additional flowers with using the same blending, colored pencils, and Copic marker techniques that we did to add depth. Now I'm going to grab this Opulent frame die, the 2 largest dies from the set, and we're going to create a frame. But because the 2 dies overlap each other, you can't actually die cut at once. So you use the largest die first and die cut that first panel, and then you'll center your second die in and die cut it, and then you'll be left with this really pretty frame. Now I'm going to grab that largest die again from the Opulent Frames die set and die cut a panel that we are going to now ink blend for our background. I'm going to start with Twisted Citron Distress Oxide and ink blend the upper left and lower right corners of this panel. We're going to kind of create a really pretty subtle blended gradation background that will add some interesting color behind our flowers. Then I moved on to a little bit of Mowed Lawn at the very corners, and then just finished with a little bit more Twisted Citron to kind of even out that blend. Now we're ready to kind of construct our lacy floral panel. I have that frame here. I'm going to tuck in my 2 dogwood branches at the top and bottom of the frame. Then I will grab a sentiment that I created earlier using the Big Buzzwords stamp set. I stamped it in embossing ink and then dipped into some white embossing powder and then heat set. Of course, trimmed it down to a strip. Now I've placed my 2 final flowers to the center, right and left, and then place my sentiment on top. Then I'll grab a piece of press and seal now that I have everything arranged the way I like it. Pick up this kind of arranged lacy panel that we made, and then I will cut off that little bit of overhang from the branches. And now we're going to grab some foam adhesive strips and just add a ton of foam adhesive to the back side of not only the frame but all the die cuts as well. You want a little bit of foam adhesive behind the flowers and some of the leaves, and definitely behind that sentiment just to kind of support everything and keep everything kind of attached. I went ahead and removed the backing on my foam adhesive strips, and now I'll stick it down to that blended Opulent panel that we created. Then I'll carefully remove the press and seal, and we'll be left with a super gorgeous dimensional, tons of details to the flowers front panel for our card. So now I'm going to grab a simple A2 tough folding white card base, just add some liquid adhesive to the back side of our panel, and then I will stick it down onto our card front. And that will actually complete our card. We spent a lot of time adding a lot of interest to the florals, so we're going to let them stay the star of the show. And then that little bit of ink blending that we did in the upper left and lower right corners just kind of really brings your eye in and adds a little bit of color to the back panel, so it's not just white and with your colorful flowers. I think that little bit of blending really does kind of bring it all together. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If any questions about the products I use, please check out the links below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.